coming up on Sustainable Structures.
What you're going to see inside this house is not much has changed inside, but a lot has changed on the outside. What we did at this house was what's called a chainsaw retrofit.
We couldn't come up with a valid reason to go into a 1950 house for the cost that we thought we could build a new house for.
There's very few builders that really know how to do one of these buildings.
I had spent my whole life working internationally and flying everywhere I went. During 9/11, the planes were all grounded for 3 days. You may not remember this, but the skies cleared up. It was not local, it was over North America, because nobody was flying. It was amazing. And that was one of the real wake-up calls for me. I knew what I had been doing to the environment. And for me, reducing my carbon consumption was an essential piece of moving forward.
David Strager is a retired engineer who recently purchased his retirement home. A two-story 1947 house in central Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
What you're going to see inside this house is basically an old house, and not much has changed inside, but a lot has changed on the outside. What we did at this house was what's called a chainsaw retrofit.
A chainsaw retrofit is a method of deep energy retrofitting small buildings to Passive House standard.
You cut off the eaves of the old house, you strip the house down on the outside, and you rebuild the house from the surface of the old house out. That's the old wall. It's got a piece of plywood on the outside that was attached to the old wall frame, and all of the new construction was on the outside of that.
Buying an older home and retrofitting it to Passive House standards wasn't something that David originally set out to do.
We looked at design of a new house, and that was our original intention. As part of the designing process, I actually took a course on Passive House design and construction. I met contractors that were also interested in it, which was a great thing because I had felt like I was a little bit alone in the world up until that point.
Evan and Donald Proven are part of Sun Certified Builders Co-op, a family-run organization that specializes in constructing sustainable and energy-efficient buildings.
Our co-op has committed to high-performance buildings, and so we've decided that this is what we're going to do. We don't build conventional buildings anymore.
We all had this mindset where we wanted to make a change to how we build buildings in Manitoba.
When I met Evan and Don, just chatting with them over coffee, I knew that these guys were driven by the right sort of things. They had the right sort of objectives. So it was a right fit. One of the things we wanted was a house we could live in for as long as possible. Had to have a bedroom on the main floor. Well, these old houses all had the bedroom on the main floor because the main floor was all there was originally. So this is our bedroom, and we'll be able to use that for a long time. When we found this house for sale, we jumped on it even though we weren't ready to sell our other house, and started down the path of doing a Passive House retrofit.
You're right now in an energy-efficient, passive-esque sort of house that my wife and I decided was the way to go when our 110-year-old house started having major foundation issues, and it required several $100,000 worth of renovations to make it livable for our growing family. The fact that we had great neighbors, a walkable neighborhood, a decent lot, we decided to tear down the old house and build a new energy-efficient house on our current property.
In 2016, Lawrence Baltus tore down his old house and built a new energy-efficient home that would be more suitable for his young family.
We had 2 kids and we were all sleeping in the same bedroom at one time. And I said, this is not sustainable. Let's look at something else that might be.
Tearing their old place down wasn't a decision they came to right away.
We did look in the area. We went to tour a few homes and thought about moving. We couldn't come up with a valid reason to go into a 1945 or 1950 house for the cost that we thought we could build a new house for.
They wanted something that was more comfortable and efficient, but it also had to be cost-effective long term. So when it came to energy savings and durability, Lawrence and his family decided that building a new home designed around Passive House principles was the right fit.
Passive House is a standard that was developed by a German engineer. It has several design principles, minimizing thermal bridging, orienting the house to make use of solar gain. We also did this with the goal of minimizing our carbon footprint. Because the heating and power demands on a house like this are fairly minimal, we decided to go all electric and got rid of the natural gas.
On the coldest days of winter, it takes roughly 1,800 watts of electricity to heat the home, the equivalent amount of energy it would take to run a hairdryer.
Doing high performance anything means you're looking at getting the most for your input. Compared to a code-built house of similar quality, it's maybe a 10% incremental cost, which can be a lot, but the long-term savings are huge.
We have no gas consumption in this house, so we're off fossil fuels.
Choosing the right home to retrofit was a decision that had many factors to consider.
We wanted the large windows at the front of the house to be facing to the south to capture the sunlight. This house originally had a large window in the middle and 2 small windows on each side. So that was replaced with 1 large window pane from one side to the other. But the rest of it, you'll find in about 30,000 different houses in Winnipeg. The other thing it had to have was enough space on both sides of the yard to do a passive house retrofit. We needed to be able to build out from the old house and not get within the 4-foot range that the building permits limit you to.
Construction began in 2015.
That project was a full deep energy retrofit. Pretty much every part of the building enclosure has been upgraded to the level of high performance. It's taking and recapitalizing an older home and extending its useful life by 150 to 200 years.
This is 1947, and when we get downstairs, there's not very much of the 1947 left.
The weeping tile that drains all the moisture from around the foundation was completely plugged up, which meant that all the concrete flooring in the basement would have to be torn out.
When we started that, we found out that the plumbing in the floor had also a corrosion problem.
The plumbing would also need to be taken out and replaced.
What we did at the same time was we excavated it down farther, and after we put the plumbing in, we put 8 inches of foam on top of the plumbing, then the concrete.
The basement floor is insulated, the exterior of the basement walls are insulated.
Above the basement, a cavity is constructed around the exterior of the home and filled with cellulose insulation.
This wall at the back here is 15 inches deep. Most of the insulation is out there, but we also blew the old walls full of cellulose. So we've got about a 17 or 18 inch thick wall blown full of cellulose.
Other upgrades to David's home include an HRV, a new roof, and high-performance windows and doors.
A house built like this is resilient. It doesn't require a lot of heat or a lot of cooling. So as we go through environmental warming, we're going to get more extreme weather. It's not going to affect the performance of this house.
We prefer function over form, so we wanted to design something that was adequate for our needs, wasn't extravagant. It has enough space for what we want to do. There's no basement in it. I remember moving in and the next day my wife and I looking at each other and going, this place is way too nice for us.
Aging in place was something that they also kept in mind when they were designing their home.
The doors are 36 inches wide. It's an accessible washroom and an accessible main floor bedroom as well. We went into this with the idea that we'd be living in here for a long, long time. Our decisions were long-term and what is the best that we can do for our kids, for ourselves, for our community.
In their old home, Lawrence and his family would spend a lot of time in their front yard.
We put a few raised gardens in front and found that working and just hanging out in the front yard, we would encounter a lot of people and meet our neighbors. One of our goals was to develop community, so we decided to make sure that we had enough front yard space.
Leaving a little space for fun inside was also a priority.
Since we have such brutally long winters, part of what we wanted to do is have a room where we would have a swing for the kids. There's a lot of dirty footmarks on the ceiling. I'm just waiting for the time when it goes through the drywall.
Even with all the benefits of living in an energy-efficient home, Lawrence doesn't see building codes increasing to Passive House standards anytime soon.
It's really difficult to change what's been done, and it's like, why would you change something that's been working for so many years? I always hear about the house needs to breathe, so sealing it would introduce problems with mold and humidity and all these things that aren't an issue if it's built properly. It does cost a little bit more up front, but it has long-term implications down the road. It was the best decision that we could have made.
We need to make it easy for people to do what we've done, for retrofits, for new buildings.
But difficulties begin to emerge when it comes to finding contractors with enough experience to successfully build or retrofit energy-efficient homes to Passive House standard.
There's very few builders that really know how to do one of these buildings. There's other training necessary to be able to do this and bring it off effectively.
These guys have been building retrofit houses, new houses, and improving them step by step by step.
Despite being in demand and booked for the foreseeable future, last year the cooperative took a step back from contract work.
We had this project that we wanted to try and focus on.
The Kylemore Residence is a Passive House designed infill in central Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
It's a standalone house.
Powered by a 5 kilowatt solar system, this net zero home is a family side project that was to be occupied by Evan's father Randy upon completion. After devoting most of his life to building energy-efficient homes, Randy was excited to finally have an opportunity to live in an energy-efficient house of his own. Sadly, in November 2018, he died suddenly at the age of 65.
Randy was always working to achieve something that when you say that it's going to last for 200 years and that it's not going to consume energy, it's not going to consume all these resources that we need to share with everybody else, it was true.
Randy was a pioneer in the energy-efficient building industry, and his role with Sun Certified Builders was paramount.
He's the go-to for everybody for technical knowledge.
The technical background that we lost with his passing, we're trying to back up all of our notes and writings.
Everything he touched relative to buildings was focused on sustainability. This guy was a leader. He set the milepost for a lot of us.
He had a responsibility as a person that had all this knowledge to pass that on and to make a real difference for his grandchildren and grandchildren's grandchildren.
Evan and Donald are determined to carry on Randy's legacy, and construction at the Kylemore residence is ongoing.
They're moving in the right direction. They're going to keep moving in the right direction. They're young, energetic, motivated the right way.
If we succeed in getting as many of these houses built as possible, the customers are going to start to demand it. Not only is it saving you money, it's way more comfortable. You're way more healthy because you're not in a house that's full of toxic chemicals off-gassing. You've got fresh air coming in through your heat recovery ventilation. You don't have condensation and mold growing. There's all of these peripheral benefits in what they can do for people, and they are accessible. You could have a house like this. Anybody can.